time to dive into the For FF's Sake podcast. FF's Sake podcast. The place for your weekly dose of fantasy football advice, breakdown, and debate. Redraft, dynasty, sleepers, and buy or sell candidates. It all gets discussed right here. Now, let's go to your hosts, two guys that say the other is an idiot. Ian Steele and Evan Harris.
Welcome into the For FF's Sake podcast. Evan Harris here. No Ian Steele today. You are welcome. You don't have to see him or hear him, but I got a co-host with me today, a guest appearance. Say hello to Coach Schepps on Twitter. You got to, before we start anything, you got to explain the name Coach Schepps.
Man, I mean, it's not very complicated. I'm a coach, man. I coach high school football. I coach wide receivers. I coach defensive backs. And then besides that, I coach speed and agility. So I run programs for like local teams, local softball teams, soccer teams, club teams from like second grade to, you know, kids that are in college. You know, I do personal training. So I'm just coached by like, so that's not my full-time job. It's a part-time job. It's a passion job. So that's why I'm Coach Schepps, man.
You probably get called coach more than anything, right? Being a coach. That's
yeah.
I had that experience too. So I know exactly what you mean. You also coach some people up in fantasy football. Before I started this podcast, I was one of those people. And I'm still one of those people because I still need help.
Appreciate you.
Tell us a little bit about Toilets to Titles podcast. Or Toilets to Titles is really a brand at this point, man. You have several podcasts going. Talk to me about it.
Going back to, you know, Coach Schepps. So I used to have another Twitter handle. It was Sliz Digital, which was like from when I was young. That was like my PlayStation, Xbox username. And then I joined Twitter. And then I became a writer for dynastyfootballfactory.com. But I wanted to do a podcast. They didn't have a podcast at that point. I talked to the guy who ran the site, and eventually, you know, I got hooked up, and he's like, hey, you're going to host our first ever podcast. So I was hosting their podcast. It was called Dynasty Warzone, which they still have. But I ended up leaving. And then I created another Twitter handle for my coaching, and that was Coach Schepps. And eventually I wanted my own thing because I was starting to get sponsorship and stuff like that. And it was going directly to the site. It wasn't coming to me. I didn't want to answer to anybody. So, you know, I left that and I got rid of that handle because I didn't want to be associated with anymore. So my coach handle that was just for coaching, I took over, and it became also my fantasy football stuff. And I started my own show. It was called Trifocal Football. I was doing it by myself. I did it for a season. I gained some followers, and it was hard, you know, doing it by myself. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this by myself anymore. I want to have a team. And there were people I met through the community, Justin and Nate. And I was like, these are guys I'm okay with working with. Like, these are great dudes. I'm happy, you know, doing something with them. So we started up Toilets to Titles, and the name Toilets to Titles, I think it's simple, but it's, you know, the toilet bowl is last place game, right? Between the two last place teams. The championship is titles. So we're trying to take people from Toilets to Titles. And it was just a podcast once a week. We didn't have like any plans of becoming anything bigger than that. As the season went on, we grew our following. And then towards the off season, I was like, you know, I'd like to be able to just focus on recording. You know, I'd like to have, you know, maybe some team members to help, you know, do some other stuff to divvy up, you know, like a social media guy to handle sharing all our content. So I don't have to worry about growing the brand that way. So we started, you know, kind of putting it out there. We're looking for people, and we got, you know, two of our friends, two of our listeners, Ben and Matt from Australia. They came on, and, you know, they were helping out, share the stuff and giving us ideas. And then they had an idea for a podcast. So now we got two podcasts, Toilets to Titles and Down Under Dynasty. All right. And then after that, we bring on Rich, who's a good dude. And we bring on Andrew Campy, you know, and then we bring on Joe. We just started rolling, man. And we had an idea for a website. And this was back in like June. We were like thinking about it. And Andrew Campy from Australia, he's our IT guy. He designed a website within a month, man. And now, because we're building a website, we need writers. So we bring on like 2 or 3 more guys. But like this whole time, like we're working as a team. You know what I mean? It's been very fun. Everybody's throwing ideas out there. Like we're all in this together. And we're like, all right, well, now we got a website. Now we got articles. We got all these men. We need content in season. And we came up with an in-season schedule. So now in season, we have 8 different shows. So we have regular Toilets to Titles on Tuesday nights. On Wednesday, we have Joe Knows. So Joe he recaps last week's games. Wednesday after that, we have Dollars to Deuces, which is a gambling show, sports gambling, strictly on the NFL, props and stuff like that. Thursday night, we do a dash of DFS. It's like 25-minute show. It leads right up to the start of the Thursday night football kickoff. It's about a 25 to 30-minute show talking DFS. Saturday night, we have Down Under Dynasty. They're talking about the dynasty implications of last week's games and how this week's looking. Sunday morning, we got Cup of Joe. So Joe from Wednesday night, he recaps Saturday night's college football games and then talk about that week's matchup. And then we finish our weekly schedule with the Blitz, which is Sunday from like 10:30 to about 12, where it's call in. Listeners come into the YouTube channel, ask all their start-sit questions, and they answer it on the air. So we're rolling right now.
Man, a lot of live broadcasts. Your coaching background is coming through on a lot of that, I think.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate that.
Man, it's a lot. You got to go check them out. YouTube, it's Toilets to Titles, all kinds of Twitter handles. As you mentioned, just a big team, and really sounds like you're building. If you're a coach, when you build a team, you want to build a family, and it sounds like that's what you guys are building over there.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Well, man, you inspire a lot of people. I know you kind of gave me an idea about doing a podcast. I said I didn't have time, and the more I thought about it, I actually have a good friend of mine, Ricky Tips, who runs the radio station that we share our podcast on, and he goes, "You need to do it. You need to do a podcast." So got together with the guy Ian, and we're rolling. So this is episode 5.
Heck yeah, man.
We're just starting out, but we're gonna analyze some early season woes, I guess, and we're going to talk about some rookies. So if you're in that position where you're trying to win this season, but you still want to get a little bit younger, right? And also if you're in that point where, man, I started my season down, there's a lot of 0-4 starts that I don't think people expected, just because the early season has been a little wild. Projections haven't completely hit, right? Never. No. But these are going to be some names of guys that you want to go pick up. You want to go add. If you're in redraft, you're going to be able to pick up some of them. If you are in dynasty, it's guys that may have underperformed to this point under projections that you want to go trade for instead of trading those younger guys. In a league, I started 0-4 this year, and I'm having guys like, "Hey, you want to sell CeeDee Lamb?" No, I do not want to sell CeeDee Lamb in dynasty.
No, you can't do that.
Hey,
you're selling CeeDee Lamb, man. That dude's a stud.
You want to sell AJ Brown in dynasty?
Yeah, no way. Not selling CeeDee Lamb, not selling AJ Brown, not selling Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is a guy that a lot of people are, targeting right now because he's been low. But man, you paid so much to get the guy. You know what I mean? If you wanted a share of Kyle Pitts in dynasty, you were taking him top 5. Even in Superflex, you know what I mean? And you can all right, but here's the thing now, to be a contrarian, with a guy like that, if somebody's willing, if you're win now, right? And somebody's willing to give you like a king's ransom that is out of it, that is trying to rebuild, do you consider it? You always have to think about it. You know what I mean? So you always need to consider, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, like we're joking and saying no, but if the offer is right, you have to consider it, especially if you're win now. If you're out of it, and someone wants CeeDee Lamb, you're probably more likely to keep him because you're trying to, stock the shelves for next season. But somebody's going to offer me like 3 firsts, and some other pieces there, or maybe a guy or 2 on the IR, like a Travis Etienne. It's a running back, so I don't value running backs as high as wide receivers. But if the price is right, I will consider it. So you can knock on my door, you can send your offers my way, and I'll think about it. But I am not very likely to move those guys.
Here's a trade for you, just in the same vein that went off in my league last week. I'll ask you about a guy with a young roster, but still competing. Traded away Pitts, Callaway in a second. Standard league, Pitts, Callaway in a second for Stephon Diggs.
Pitts, Callaway in a second. And you said he's a contender?
Young roster, so he still has a lot of young pieces, but feels like can compete this year.
Man, that's interesting. I mean, Diggs is, a top 10 wide receiver when healthy, top 5 when he's playing peak football. So, I do value Diggs over Kyle Pitts for sure. And then Callaway in a second. Callaway, I don't really know what his long-term projection is. I thought I'd be seeing a lot more out of him throughout the first few weeks of the season. And we really haven't. This week, what do you have, like 50 yards and 4 receptions, so maybe like 9 points. And I think that might have been his best outing this year. minus getting a touchdown in another game. But, I could see that. I could definitely, I think that's a disappointment for the team selling Pitts because they were hoping that his value was going to be a lot higher than that. And his value is probably going to go up. So it's a little, selling lower than you would have expected to. But you know what? If you're trying to get Diggs, if you can add him to a wide receiver core that's strong and go ahead and make a run, then I get it.
So let's hit some of these rookies in that same area. We're looking at 4 rookies, again, that you can rely on going down the rest of the season or just building pieces for your team. I'm going to start off with a guy that I think probably already has some good value no matter where you're getting him, but maybe hasn't performed to where people have drafted him, and that's Javonte Williams. I think if you can buy low on Javonte Williams, or honestly even just pay where Javonte Williams got drafted at initially, that's good value right now. I think you look at the snap share with Melvin Gordon. I don't think anybody expects Melvin Gordon to be the bulk carrier the rest of the season. Williams is outperforming him with less carries. Got 51% of the snaps last week, was the first time he had got the majority of the snaps in a few weeks. I think he's a piece that, look, if you can go acquire him, pay value at dynasty level or even in redraft, if you can go trade a guy like Melvin Gordon, trade a guy like Darrell Henderson, that's pieces that I would move right now that have outperformed Williams to this point. But I'm absolutely taking that swap.
Man, yeah. So Javonte Williams, I was pretty high on. A few of the guys from Toilets to Titles were pretty high on. I had him over Travis Etienne, and that's not really taking a victory lap. Etienne did go down, but I just knew, James Robinson's there. And also I thought Laviska Shenault was going to be a lot more involved in that offense than he has been. I thought Laviska Shenault was going to fill into that Percy Harvin role, and he really hasn't. I'm kind of surprised that Urban Meyer hasn't used him the way he could use him, because I don't think he's just a gadget guy. I think he can do more than that, but you can definitely, throw some touches in there. You can create some touches for him, more touches than he's gotten. But Javonte Williams, I really like the guy. Melvin Gordon to me is just a guy, but he's actually looked like this year he's got some pop. He looks like he's got a little more energy. He's got a little more juice to his runs, but I do eventually think Javonte Williams is going to take over. It's his backfield going forward. It's just frustrating watching him have, a share. And then if coming out of camp this year, there was buzz. Like July, it was super high on Javonte Williams. He's the guy. But then you noticed, like, once pads came on and it really started going, like early August, it started to kind of tail off. And then there was, is he going to, how often is he going to see the field? So it was very interesting to watch the trajectory of his, playing time go from high, because at the draft it was kind of here because you knew Melvin Gordon was there, then it went up, then it went down. But I think now is the time to definitely buy in, because I expect his stock to go up, probably right around the time of the playoffs. If the Broncos started out hot, but they really didn't play anybody. Now they lose to Baltimore. So let's see how they go. If they're a team that they really want to get it together, they're going to have to do it with running the football, playing good defense, because they have a good defense. So he's the guy. If he's given them a better opportunity to win games, move the chains, then he's going to take over there for sure.
I've seen some sell high of Melvin Gordon, especially after week 1, and I was shocked because I'm sitting there thinking he scored on a 70-yard touchdown in week 1 that his whole team wanted him to go down at the 2-yard line so they could end the game.
Right.
So just interesting when you look at points. Not all fantasy points are created equal. I think it's nice to know what was the scenario going into it.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So give us a guy, a rookie, not just a guy, not a Jag. No pun intended on the Jaguars, but give us a rookie that you're looking forward to or you would want to go acquire at this point in the season.
Can I give you a few? I got a few.
Absolutely. Here. Let's roll.
Yeah,
Let's roll.
Khalil Herbert, I've been pretty high on in Chicago. I have him on a lot of my rosters, including redraft rosters, because I do feel like he's the second best back there in Chicago. Now, I don't know the extent of David Montgomery's knee injury, but they're saying it's not an ACL. It should be a few weeks. Damian Williams is a little banged up. So Khalil Herbert, just by, addition by subtraction, those guys being out, he should get opportunity. Justin Fields, as he's emerging, it should help the running game. So I'm looking for Khalil Herbert to definitely get an uptick. I don't know if it's going to last all season, but we're going to see a few weeks here of Khalil Herbert. Kenneth Gainwell, I think he's very interesting. He's looked very good in spurts. there in Philadelphia. I don't think Miles Sanders is a good athlete. He's a decent running back. Well, he's a good running back, right? He's a professional running back. But, for some reason, they just don't give him the touches. They don't believe. I don't know whether they're concerned about injury or whatever. But Gainwell, when he's gotten the touches, he's looked great. And I could see Philadelphia kind of shifting over to give him more touches. So I keep an eye on him. Cadarius Tony, who you mentioned before the show with the Giants, he looked very good, man. He's like a guy, you put him in a phone booth, you can't tackle him, you and him. And I think the Giants are looking for playmakers. Michael Carter, Elijah Moore, and Zach Wilson. So I got 3 Jets. I like Michael Carter a lot. He got a decent amount of touches last week. I like Elijah Moore a lot. I like Zach Wilson a lot. So I was comparing Elijah Moore to Rondale Moore. So what Rondale Moore is for Kyler Murray, he's a broken play wide receiver. He's more than that. He's a vertical route. He can run, a decent amount of routes. And Elijah Moore is that to Zach Wilson, where Zach Wilson and Kyler Murray can both escape chaos in the pocket. And as they escape, cornerbacks, defensive backs, they're only trying to hold a wide receiver for a few seconds. And then they're expecting their defensive line to get home, flush this guy out. With Kyler Murray and Zach Wilson, as they get flushed out, you got Zach Wilson pointing to wide receivers downfield, extend your route. He doesn't have to point to Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore has instincts to do that. He's going to break up field. Zach Wilson's going to drop it to him. So I'm just going to look for a few big plays from Elijah Moore coming down the stretch. Him and Zach Wilson had a big connection in camp, and I think he's going to emerge there.
Man, right before the season, I guess it was everybody watching the preseason camp videos, but Elijah Moore's stock was out of this world.
Yeah.
Now it seems to have dropped back to maybe below earth, right? I talked about real quick a guy that you mentioned. Honestly, I hadn't given much thought to. I analyzed him in pre-draft, watched some video of him, and then just kind of forgot about him. Khalil Herbert. Herbert is an interesting add in redraft this week. And if you can pick him up in Dynasty, because everybody loves young running backs in Dynasty, if he has a few good weeks, you can get some really good return trade value back on that investment. So really interesting pieces there. Another guy that
now's the time to sell him.
Yes.
Because if you hopefully you have him. Hopefully you've had him on rosters, and because he was going like in the 3rd round of Dynasty rookie draft. So if you have him, now's the time, especially if you're out of it. It's hard to say you're out of it week 4, but if there's a contender who lost to David Montgomery or lost to Christian McCaffrey, I'm not saying Khalil Herbert's going to replace a Christian McCaffrey, but people get desperate. If they don't have a running back 2 this week, if they had Elijah Mitchell and they had Tyson Williams, they got lucky enough to grab those guys, and both of those guys are out, and that's who they were planning on having as their RB2 or their flex, they're desperate. You can move Khalil Herbert. What do you want for Khalil Herbert? I don't know, man. What do you need? Like maybe 2 seconds. At this point, give me if you can give me 2 seconds for a guy who's going to start in your lineup, I think I'd do that. I pull that trigger.
So a guy you did not mention, I'm very excited to return for multiple reasons, is Rashad Bateman. A lot of people had Bateman rated high. I had him as my wide receiver 2 coming out in this draft. A little bit of a spicy take. I know there's other guys like Smith and Waddle. Waddle's looked really good. Smith looked really good this weekend. Jamar Chase is the enigma that is Jamar Chase. Is looking really good in this early season, even sometimes with not as much opportunity, or not as much target share, I should say. But Rashad Bateman is a guy that I'm going to rely on the talent. I don't like where he landed. I didn't like him landing in Baltimore. But when you go back and watch him, it was just a guy that consistently gets open, savvy route runner, knows how to generate space. And I think that that's going to be a sight for sore eyes when he hits the field in Baltimore. I couple this with, a lot of people are like, well, Marquise Goodwin is having a breakout year. Hollywood having a Marquise Goodwin.
Brown.
Hollywood Brown.
Help me out. I was wondering when you said Goodwin before, I should have corrected you. I was like, man, am I missing something?
No. So Hollywood Brown. I dropped the ball like he did in week 3 a couple times.
Yes.
But he's had a really good start. I think he's playing more of the role that they were expecting Bateman to play. I think they want Brown to be that 2, and I think they drafted Bateman to be the 1. So much so you go back into preseason camp, and don't want to put too much weight into that type of stuff, but Marshawn Lattimore was shadowing Bateman in camp, and there was several videos of him getting one of the top corners in the league getting regularly burned by Bateman. I think Bateman, if he's fully healthy coming back, give him a week to really get under himself a little bit. But I think he's a guy that could win some leagues down the stretch. He has the draft capital. He's going to have the opportunity.
Well, so Bateman in that offense, he's going to be the X. He's going to be the outside guy, and that's not Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown is supposed to be the Z. He's supposed to be in the slot. He's supposed to be, that big play threat. And Bateman's going to be your chain mover. So that offense will definitely be more efficient when it has both of them going. And now that Hollywood Brown is starting to have those explosive plays, you're going to have safeties cheating over the top. So instead of bracketing Bateman, they're going to try to lock Bateman up with one guy. All right. And then they're going to try to throw a safety over the top of Hollywood Brown. So they're going to have somebody inside. They're going to have somebody over the top. And that's going to free things up for them. It's going to free things up for the offense in general, but it should definitely free things up for Bateman because, like you said, he was going against Marlon Humphrey right there in Baltimore, and he was doing a good job against him. And if he can do that, there's not many corners in the NFL who are going to give him more fits than that. So Bateman, elite at the college level, I'm excited to see how he transitions to the NFL game. I'm excited to see if missing camp, is going to hurt him at all. Well, not like missing, from the point when he got hurt, right? So let's see how he transitions to the NFL game. But if you look at his film, he's built for success. He's got a route tree. He's got that high point ability. He can go up and catch the ball. He's got some breakaway speed. He's a very exciting prospect. And I think Baltimore can't wait to have him back.
I want to touch on one more guy you talked about, Kenneth Gainwell, another player I was really high on coming out. I think he would have got drafted a much different spot had he played through the year, sat out from COVID. Interesting fact about him, I listened to an interview. He had 3 family members pass away from COVID.
Jeez.
So that was why he decided to take the step to sit out. So, always want to respect that decision. But here's a guy that landed it kind of in a situation like Bateman. He not many people liked him landing with the Eagles, mainly from the standpoint of there's a lot of Miles Sanders truthers out there. I've been one of those guys. He burnt me last year pretty hard. One thing I'll say is if you're hesitating on Gainwell right now, he's still only he hasn't got even 40% of the snap share yet. That's slowly growing. He's definitely got that third down role now, getting the catches out of the backfield. And when has Sanders been able to fully establish himself and not lose carries to a guy like Boston Scott, or I believe Jordan Howard was there his rookie year as well. So he's never been able to just fully take over. Even when he had his big stretch to end 2019, Boston Scott, those last 5 games, was a top 10 running back in fantasy football for those last 5 games. So I think the opportunity is going to be there for Gainwell. I think the offensive line being beat up right now, they're going to have to, Hurts is going to have to check it down. Really wish Hurts would learn the O part of that RPO. It's either I'm going to run or I'm going to pass. I forget that I have an option sometimes.
Right.
But I'm Gainwell, he's going to be hard to buy low on. He just had a pretty solid week. But if I think you can buy lower than how he's going to finish the season, I guess is what I'm getting at, especially in redraft.
All you need is a little, like if Miles Sanders gets dinged up, man, just opportunity. All Gainwell needs is opportunity. We've seen it translate. What he did at the college level, it's translated. Like the dude is quick, he's shifty, he's elusive, he's tough for a little guy. I mean, Memphis is a running back factory right now. Like they are producing running backs. Darrell Henderson, Tony Pollard, Kenneth Gainwell. I'm sure there's somebody I'm missing here. Oh, Antonio Gibson.
Yep.
that's another one, right? So they're a running back factory. All Gainwell needs is opportunity. If Miles Sanders goes down with a hammy, and he's had some little injuries. Because Miles Sanders, people forget. So now I can't say this is a knock on Sanders because this would have to be a knock on Gainwell as well, because Gainwell was in a running back by committee, right? And Miles Sanders, he was behind Saquon Barkley. He had 1 year of full RB1 play. So I guess they both had, but I still think Gainwell was more involved, over the career he had at Memphis than Miles Sanders was, in his career. But Miles Sanders, I don't know if he can handle a full RB1 workload. I don't think that Philly thinks he can. I don't think they believe it. So if the guy gets dinged up, if Gainwell gets an opportunity, he might never give that job back.
No, and you're running into a situation where if they start as slow as they have, keep losing games, they're going to turn to the rookie anyways. Let's see what we got. That's what they did with Hurts late last season. I mean, Philadelphia over the last few years has been that place to go grab some obscure player like Fulgham, who had a stretch because they were losing games. Had to throw somebody in. Huh?
I think Fulgham came out of Fordham. I might be wrong.
I'm not sure.
Greg, I'll look it up.
Greg, it's going to drive you insane. I got to find out.
Yeah.
Greg Ward, and another one that just kind of came out of nowhere. So there's going to be some pieces there, I think, that could have a better season down the stretch and continue to produce. I think Gainwell is one of those. I saw Gainwell started in a redraft this week, which was, I thought, gutsy, but it worked out pretty well. Had a pretty solid week. Where's he from?
Fulgham was Old Dominion.
Old Dominion. There you go.
One of those schools.
All right, so we're getting close to having to wrap up here. I want to touch on one last thing, and we got we're entering the spooky season. If you play into that, it's October. So let's look at some Spooktober. I'm going to get a cease and desist from Bussin' with the Boys on that one.
Spooktober.
They claim that. But let's talk about some guys that have vastly outperformed expectations early in the season. There's a few that we had talked about pre-show. Let's talk about Cordarelle Patterson. Now, if I would have told you before the season, there was hot takes before the season, but if I would have said, hey, Cordarelle Patterson 4 weeks in is going to be RB2 and wide receiver 5, you would have never listened to another thing I said unless for comedic reasonings.
Right.
But
I didn't even know he was in Atlanta. When did he even sign with Atlanta? I didn't know.
So weird. So they didn't use him much in the preseason. Everybody thought that there was a rookie down there that people thought, okay, this guy's going to end up being the RB2. I remember picking up in the league, and now I can't remember his name because that's how. Huh?
He got cut.
Oh, yeah. Irrelevant. I was big on Hawkins when they picked him up as an undrafted free agent. I got excited about him. He got cut before the season ever started. Mike Davis has looked like a shell of himself from the Panthers. And here it is. It's the Cordarelle Patterson show, and he's doing it on the ground, in the air. Can he sustain this is the question I have for you.
The Falcons aren't a good team. They're not. They're not winning. They're not making the playoffs. They're probably picking top 10 this year. And what does that say? That says garbage time. Garbage time, right? I mean, for
Absolutely.
real, it's a thing. It's a real thing. And I think Cordarelle Patterson is going to have a lot of garbage time opportunities, and all it takes for a guy like that, who's just, a weapon, it just takes one play and he could turn it into, 40 yards on the ground and a touchdown. That's 10 points. 40 yards in the air and a touchdown. That's 11 points. So do I think he's going to stay top 5 in both categories? No, but I could see him being a top 12 wide receiver just from, opportunity and big plays, man. But it's just crazy to say. It's scary. It's a scary thought that Cordarelle Patterson is producing like he is right now. But Matt Ryan, all my Matt Ryan shares need it through the air, man. We need it because Matt Ryan was doo-doo the first 3 weeks of the season. I started Taylor Heineke last week, and I think that's another guy you're going to roll to because Matt Ryan was playing so bad. And he played bad last year. I just couldn't sell him. Nobody was willing to buy. So I was hoping with the addition of Kyle Pitts, I was hoping they'd keep Julio Jones. So now they got Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Pitts for a year. So Matt Ryan could get it done. But they draft a tight end top 5. And then they sell their best wide receiver. And what are they doing? How is that going to help your tight end? That's scary too. You make an investment and then you just completely dump all over it. But I'm going on a tangent about the Falcons.
No, man, it's kind of weird because I think there's a few names you could name that we expected in Atlanta that aren't getting the opportunities because Patterson's taking it all. And that's probably guys like Mike Davis. And we talked about the other running backs, a guy like Russell Gage, who I thought had some value in the offseason and now has no value. I got offered a third and I should have taken it for Gage at this point because he's just dropped off the face of the earth. Banged up a little bit now. Ridley, everybody expected to take that next step, be a true wide receiver 1. He's not performing.
Hopefully he does. Level. Hopefully he still does.
Still has a chance. We're still way early in the season. So Pitts as well. I mean, Patterson's just give me the ball. And I want to be fair real quick on some Patterson takes, okay? There were some people that had this right. 6 years ago. When the Patterson takes were about
Right.
5 or 6 years ago, there was a lot of people that said this could be his ceiling. They were just 5 or 6 years late, so they're there.
Well, you're down there in Tennessee, so he was a
Oh, man.
JUCO transfer. He was huge in college.
We weren't very good back then. We're still not very good, but he gave us something to cheer for. Him and Justin Hunter ended up signing with the Titans and not doing very much. Oh, Tyler Bray. Call him up, Steelers.
Yeah.
Steelers need a quarterback, but I digress. So another guy real quick is we mentioned Taylor Heineke. I'm going to throw another name at you just to get your opinion on. You talked about having him in the league is Dawson Knox. So Knox was a guy that was cut, I think, in a lot of formats in the preseason, whether it be dynasty or you drafted him in redraft. I don't think anybody drafted Knox in redraft because it wasn't expected for him to win the job in camp. Comes out, has a slow week 1, decent week 2, and then the last 2 weeks he's been a touchdown factory, getting target share, getting snap share. Can Knox keep it up? And then Taylor Heineke is a guy that was picked up off waivers. I thought he was going to be able to tell his grandchildren about the time he played Tom Brady in the playoffs, and that's all he was going to talk about for football. But now he's a guy that's getting it done with his legs, getting it done through the air. We love that in fantasy when we have a mobile quarterback. I think I mentioned on the show actually a few weeks ago, I think he's going to be a better fantasy quarterback than NFL quarterback. I think that's showing a little bit so far, but looks good. Talk about those two guys.
Well, I'm going to see your Dawson Knox and raise you a Max Williams because I think both of them can produce still. Because and this is coming from a guy who didn't start Dawson Knox yet all season because I didn't think it was going to be consistent. But I did start Max Williams last week, and it helped me out. And I just think both of those guys, volume, those offenses, their quarterbacks are throwing the ball 40 times a game, and everybody's producing. Everybody's producing. Cole Beasley's producing. Emmanuel Sanders is producing. Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox. They can all handle it. The guy who's the odd man out is Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis, I thought, was going to take a step, and he just hasn't, man. He's been absolutely absent. There was a laser Josh Allen threw to him in the back of the end zone last week, like on a rollout to the right side of the end zone, just boom, threw it in there and just bounced right off his hands, man. When you drop those touchdowns, quarterbacks don't want to go back to you. So
they don't forget it.
I think Dawson Knox can continue to produce. I think Max Williams, I want shares of him. If he's available in your waivers still, on Towards the Titles on our waiver wire episode that we release, to our Patreons, we talked about him, 2 weeks ago, pick him up. And you better pick him up because the guy, there's not a lot of tight end ones, man. Like if you didn't take a tight end in the top 5 rounds, you're probably playing week to week which tight end you're starting. Max Williams, if you can get 7 or 8 receptions from a guy that you picked up on the waivers, that's huge because that should be kind of your game plan. Because if you're avoiding tight end, then you know what, you're just kind of guessing after that because it's hard to tell what's going to be consistent. And then with Heineke, I mean, I like the Washington football team. I thought the Washington football team was going to be a defensive team this year. I thought their defense was going to dominate. And boy, was I wrong because the defense has just looked average. Like I thought it was going to be the best defense in the NFL. I'm going to say it. I said it was going to be, and I'm wrong. They're letting up like 30 points a game. It's ridiculous. But their offense has stepped up. Gibson's looking good. McLaurin had a huge week. So Curtis Samuel's coming back. Logan Thomas a little banged up. That might help. That might hurt Heineke because it's helpful to have a guy who you can trust to move the chains across the middle like that. But I think Heineke with his legs, I think he's going to be decent. So, I'm feeling good about all 3 of them.
Hey, Curtis Samuel, little throw in. That's a guy you need to go trade for, pick up if he's out there. Limited snaps last week. He had 4 targets, 4 receptions, but 3 of those 4 were schemed up. They were schemed up opportunities to get the ball in his hands, and they were playing him in a limited role. I think he's going to continue to have a role in that offense. One last thing, because I'm a Gibson truther, drafted him early last year. I'm going to look at the camera for this one. Coaches, you said in the preseason he was going to get a CMC workload. I have not forgotten. Give the man his workload. He's averaging over 5 yards a touch. Get the ball in his hands.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Curtis Samuel ain't going to help, man. That is not going to help having a healthy Curtis Samuel because I think they're wasting touches. Throwing let Curtis Samuel be a wide receiver. let Antonio Gibson be your playmaker, man. Like, just let him go. Take the whatever off, like the training wheels, and just let the kid go. Just fully involve him in that offense.
Like Elsa, man, let it go. Sorry,
Just
two kids.
That's good, man. I got a daughter. I got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old son, man. We're going to Disney in 2 months, so
Watch out.
I know all about Elsa.
Hey, enjoy it. Well, man, I really appreciate you jumping on here. I know we've went a little bit longer than what we were expecting, but just appreciate you. Shout out one more time, Toilets to Titles, and then also the Patreon.
Yeah, man. toiletstotitles.com. Check us out. Follow me on the Twitter at Coach Schepps. You can find all the links to our stuff, our YouTube channel, everything. Subscribe, hit the bell. You'll be alerted whenever we go live. We go live all the time. If you want an interactive show on Sunday mornings leading up to the games, and you don't want to just be watching Matthew Berry or somebody tell you who to play, you want to come in and actually talk specifically about your lineup, we're your guys. You put them in, you go in our YouTube chat, and you just kind of ask us all your fantasy questions, and we're going to answer you in our Patreon. It's patreon.com/toilets-to-titles. Tier 1 is like $3 a month, and we have a Discord chat with 14 of us in there. We got guys from Australia, 3 of us. So it's like a 24/7 fantasy football chat, trades, start sits, whatever. It goes in that chat. It's $3 a month. It supports the show, and it's also, if you're looking for answers, you can get them whenever the hell you want them, because we're always up.
If you're in my Dynasty League, don't join that because I ask a lot about trades in there. But no, I'm kidding. It's a cool resource. I'm only signed into one Patreon, one Discord, and you're it, man. So I enjoy it. We're gonna have to wrap up here. Let's hit the outro.
Thank you for listening. Follow For FF's Sake on all social media platforms and search for us wherever you get your podcasts.